Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at Pokemon Players Cup 3. This is the video game regional finals, and this is going to be the first of the European rounds between Guillermo Castilla and Francesco. This is definitely an exciting match. We got some fun text. Just a reminder for what the rule set is. Restricted Pokemon are allowed, but only one restricted Pokemon. There's no banned Pokemon like there were previously, so bit of a spicy round, and we get a whole lot of interesting Pokemon choices here. So let's go ahead and boop, hop right into it. So it looks like we have, I believe, that is Francesco on the other side, starting out with the Incineroar and the Umbreon, and we get Rotom, Wash, and Zacian with the Intrepid Sword. So, yep, Guillermo Castilla is on our side, and Francesco is on the other side. We get the Intimidates coming out here. That is actually pretty big going into Zacian. Zacian's ability does automatically give it a +1 to its attack, so this brings it down to a little bit more manageable. But importantly, Umbreon here is super bulky. Rotom and Zacian both would just have to target it with a lot of stuff in order for Umbreon to go down at all. Zacian, while relatively strong, as we see the fake out there, one of its main weaknesses is that it can't Dynamax, so it's always a safe target to hit with a fake out unless maybe it would switch or something. We see Guillermo Rotom goes for a Protect, and Umbreon goes for an attack into the Rotom Wash, and that gets, but it of course is blocked by said Protect. It looks like Zacian is going for a Substitute here. So Guillermo Zacian is a little bit on the bulkier side, a little bit more defensive. Not an all-out attacker like we see a lot of Zacians. Both options are definitely good. They're definitely solid. But this gives Zacian a little bit more defense, a little bit more protection, and so this kind of helps it survive through fake-out turns. Here we see Nasty Plot coming out of Rotom Wash. So Guillermo took this turn setting up, making sure that he will have at least something strong to attack with in the next one. We see the Flare Blitz coming out here into the Zacian. That will probably break the Substitute. If it doesn't, it'll get very close to it. And see, there we go. Now Zacian probably took less damage from the Substitute than the Flare Blitz, but that definitely hurt. There we see Umbreon using Yawn, and this is where Umbreon starts to get scary. Guillermo set up with the Rotom, but now it's about to fall asleep. He can try to get an attack off with it. It would do a fair amount of damage to the Umbreon, but definitely not enough. I think you definitely have to switch out here. But hey, maybe not. Looks like Guillermo is just going for the attack. Zacian looks like it is going to be using Close Combat into the Umbreon just to try to take it down. I think that's also a pretty strong move here, because this Umbreon, if Guillermo pivots back into getting defensive, trying to make sure nothing goes to sleep, making sure nothing is, statusified by this Umbreon, it's just going to get real bad for him. Because as we see there, Umbreon, even though Zacian, of course, Zacian did have the -1 attack from the Intimidate, it still doesn't do enough to kill this Umbreon, and I doubt that this Rotom Wash is going to do enough to kill it. Actually, it does go through, does get it down. So Umbreon falls, which is fantastic for Guillermo. Now this Rotom is going to sleep here. Another Flare Blitz comes out likely into the Zacian. It's going to do a lot of damage, and Zacian goes down. So we trade Umbreon for Zacian. Honestly, if I'm Guillermo, I think I take that. Zacian is the answer to Umbreon, but Umbreon can kind of body Guillermo's entire team. So in the end, I will gladly take that. And of course, Guillermo still has 2 strong attackers in Rotom Wash if it wakes up, and of course this Dragapult. Luckily, this Incineroar doesn't have a fake out to use, and of course, Dragapult's not affected by that thanks to its ghost typing, but Rotom Wash, if it wakes up, that would be scary. And of course, I expect Guillermo to switch into Rillaboom at some point here soon. But that is a Venusaur. I'm really liking all of Francesco's shiny Pokemon over on his side. That definitely takes a lot of work to get. I'm expecting this Venusaur to be Sleep Powder. I don't see why it would be anything else in this. Francesco's team seems very defensive. Keeping more on that line with Venusaur as fairly defensive, I think, would be smart. Alternatively, he could be trying to go, 2 directions, 2 very opposite directions. Umbreon super defensive, Venusaur super offensive. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Gigantamax Venusaur either. But that might not come out. Maybe it would be the Incineroar. Francesco likely has a Sunsetter on his team, likely in the back. Then again, Venusaur is just kind of strong on its own. But there we see Incineroar switching out, and here comes the Groudon, exactly. So here comes the Sun. Wouldn't be surprised to see that Venusaur Dynamaxing now if it wants to try to get a lot of damage onto this Rotom Wash. And so Guillermo swapped out Dragapult for Rillaboom. So Francesco, we know all 4 Pokemon that both players brought. The Rotom stays asleep. There is no Gigantamax. And let's see here. So this was just a turn of switching, is what it seems like. Protect coming out on the Rillaboom. Guillermo just trying to see what he can do with this Rotom Wash. A Will-O-Wisp here wouldn't be horrible. Of course, Water-type moves, their effectiveness is halved in the sun, so Groudon can kind of tank anything that Rotom Wash decides to throw at it, even with the nasty plot boost. Rillaboom here not going for any fake outs. That's mostly Guillermo, I think, just trying to play it safe, because either Groudon or Venusaur could Gigantamax, or Dynamax, you know. But instead, Venusaur actually switches out into Incineroar, and since the Rillaboom is going for the Protect, this kind of... Guillermo is really not getting much damage off here. The only thing that's happened is that the Incineroar has taken Flare Blitz damage and that the Umbreon is knocked out. And Francesco just keeps getting Intimidates off onto Guillermo's offensive Pokemon. With this Rotom Wash staying asleep, it's very, very difficult for him to get any damage out. Groudon, we see it does go ahead and Dynamax. Wouldn't be surprised, a lot of Groudons run something like Fire Fang as a physical fire move to be boosted by the sun, and that will still do a lot of damage to Rillaboom even through Protect. Of course, here we see there is a Dynamax. I believe that's going to be the Rillaboom. I don't know if this is Dynamax or Gigantamax Rillaboom. Either one could definitely be the case. Oh no, the Rotom Wash is actually going to be Dynamaxing, even though it is still asleep. So this is Guillermo. I believe that was only 2 turns of sleep. There's a potential for 3 turns of sleep though. Rillaboom does use the Protect. Perhaps Guillermo is just banking on Rotom surviving whatever it gets hit by. And let's see, that's Max Rockfall going into the Rotom. Goes down to half HP. Very, definitely... I don't know if it would have died from that. But, better safe than sorry. Oh, it does wake up though. So maybe that was 3 turns. Maybe knew what he was doing. And the Incineroar does take the damage. Luckily, Incineroar does resist it due to the Venusaur switching out. And that's actually a little bit rough for Guillermo because now the sun is still up for Francesco to... Oh, this is not Rotom Wash. This is Rotom Heat. My apologies. Rotom Heat. I don't know why I was saying Rotom Wash. This is a Rotom Heat. So that is why the Rockfall was super effective. Anyways... Goodness gracious, it's even red. I don't know, I think I got confused with the shininess on Francesco's side, even though Guillermo's does not seem to be shiny. But anyways, that actually changes a lot of stuff. So the Venusaur was actually in quite a bit of danger from this Rotom Heat. Guillermo is in a pretty decent spot right now, but we know that a Max Rockfall will take out this Rotom Heat, and we know that Rotom Heat is slower. So there we go. The Protect is kind of mandated, which means it's a little bit of a free switch in for this Incineroar if it wants to just switch, if it wants to use something like a Parting Shot or a U-turn. Looks like that was a Grassy Glide coming out of the Rillaboom. Or maybe it was a Wood Hammer. Seems like it was a Wood Hammer, otherwise Rillaboom would have not taken that much damage. And we have the U-turn here out of the Incineroar, meaning the Venusaur comes in pretty much scot-free. And now this Venusaur is going to be zooming. The only move that's going to go faster than it is Rillaboom's Grassy Glide. But there's a chance this Rillaboom is Choice Band. Actually, no, I think we saw it. It's not Choice Band. Groudon, though, heals up a little bit. That's not going to matter too much. Rillaboom does heal. It does matter a little bit on this Rotom Heat. If it had gotten 2 turns of healing, that would have been nice. But, of course, the Levitate makes it so that doesn't happen. If I'm Guillermo here, I think precisely. I think I have to switch your Rotom Heat out because you need it to answer the Venusaur, right? It can't die to the Groudon. It just can't. Rillaboom here, I think you have to go for the attack again on the Groudon. It did a fair amount of damage last time, but you have to get it within range for something like a Dragapult's Dragon Darts to take it out. In comes Dragapult. This is likely, again, a fairly offensive Dragapult. Of course, we have seen stuff like supportive Dragapult that has Will-O-Wisp, Reflect, Surf, or Will-O-Wisp Light Screen, Surf, that type of stuff. Here we see the Sludge Bomb actually comes out. It's not very effective as their poison. There is no poison. And now we get another Max Rockfall out of Groudon, which is interesting. It goes into the Dragapult, and Dragapult goes down. So it looks like Francesco was just wanting to make sure that slot got either way, which makes sense. I think Incineroar beats Rillaboom in a 1v1, especially if Rillaboom doesn't have Fake Out. And if it comes down to that, which it doesn't look like, which it looks like it's going to be at the very least a 2v1 with Rillaboom versus likely Rillaboom Rillaboom versus Incineroar. Incineroar will almost always win that, especially with how low Rillaboom is right now. And this grassy terrain is going to be fading sooner rather than later. Rotom Heat does come out. It does have safety goggles, so it won't be taking any chip damage from the sand. It is a shiny Rotom Heat. Okay, and Groudon comes out of Dynamax. So both Dynamax is out, but Francesco is absolutely in a much stronger position. Rillaboom and Rotom Heat are both below half health. Venusaur and Groudon both in the green, and the Incineroar is still at least fairly healthy. About on par with Guillermo's 2 Pokemon, so this is going to be rough for Guillermo to come back from. It looks like Groudon does switch out. Incineroar comes in. This is going to be a -3 or at least a -2 on Rillaboom's attack stat. That is going to be very, very rough. The Rotom Heat doesn't mind it too much, but now Rotom Heat doesn't have any of the Nasty Plot online. So Francesco is going to be in a little bit of danger. The Rillaboom uses Protect. I mean, at least it will survive, and this will, at the very least, get Guillermo a little bit more information as to what the Venusaur has. What was that attack? Gonna be honest, I don't entirely know what that was. That might have been a Weather Ball. Actually, I think that's definitely what it was. I believe that was a Weather Ball out of Francesco's Venusaur. That's going to do, which of course does super effective damage to the Rotom due to due to the sandstorm that's currently in place. That's actually pretty big out of Francesco because now Guillermo knows that whenever Groudon does use Max Rockfall, this Venusaur is still absolutely a threat to Rotom Heat. And in the sun, Weather Ball is additionally, I mean, heck, Weather Ball is even a threat to Rillaboom, although to be fair, Sludge Bomb will likely do more damage. And there we see Guillermo goes ahead and switches away from that. So Guillermo, not switches away. Guillermo goes ahead, concedes that game, and we're going into match 2. That was a pretty good showing from Francesco. Guillermo was kind of on the back foot, did a good job of targeting out that Umbreon and taking it down. But Francesco had some really good switches, and especially some really good calls, taking out that Rotom Heat. Getting that thing to sleep with a yawn was huge. Rotom Heat's damage output got so much lower because of that, and it took a lot of damage from the Groudon. I think the Dynamaxing was smart on Guillermo's end, but more than anything, getting that sleep on the Rotom Heat is kind of where this game took a sharp turn. So, if I'm Francesco, I absolutely bring that Umbreon again, because just that yawn at the beginning changed the entire course of the game. Of course, the Rillaboom was at least decently effective. I think Guillermo needs to bring that to take care of the Groudon, but it's going to be difficult, really, to figure out how to take care of that kind of Groudon Venusaur core. It's a very, very powerful core, used a lot in Series 8. Of course, Zacian seems strong, but Groudon really deals with it very, very well. And with Guillermo only bringing Rillaboom for it, I think he needs to find a different answer to Groudon, and not just in terms of changing the weather, but in terms of tackling Groudon as an attacker, as this big defensive body that can absolutely Dynamax and just rock Guillermo's whole team. I will say, we didn't get to see much out of Dragapult. It came in and then just got KO'd immediately. I think there's potential there for Dragapult to be pretty effective. It could be a special Dragapult if it has something like Surf. It could be Max or Surf or Waterfall, whatever. Dragapult has a massive move pool. That could definitely be useful. It could definitely do some work. Into the Groudon, unfortunately, it doesn't have like safety goggles or anything, so it can still absolutely get put to sleep by a speedy Venusaur. Now, we did only see Sludge Bomb and Weather Ball out of this Venusaur. We didn't see any other attacks. I'm expecting a Sleep Powder. I'm expecting Protect, but you never know. So, game 2 is getting started, and let's get into it. And as we see, of course, Francesco, same exact start. It worked perfectly last time. And here we see Guillermo shifting it up. Rotom Heat does come out, and this time it's Grimmsnarl. So I like this look a lot better from Guillermo. Grimmsnarl, of course, the Intimidate comes out. This time it's perfectly fine, right? Zacian is not there to get intimidated, so when it comes in, it's going to be doing plenty of damage. Guillermo, I like this, going ahead and putting in the Protect. And so the mere threat of this Grimmsnarl will cause several things to happen. One, this Incineroar is likely going to try to fake out the Grimmsnarl, or it's going to be faking out. Either way, we know it's going to be fake outing. But this Umbreon will either be switching out, or it might just be going for a regular attack. Now, unless Francesco is a super, super big brain, yeah, there we see. So Umbreon is staying in. Rotom Heat uses the Protect. Incineroar actually goes in for the U-turn, doesn't do very much damage to Zacian. Now, this is a little bit of a problem for Francesco. That was a critical hit. We saw it do a big, let's see, what was that, 20 damage? So this is a little bit of a problem for Francesco because now Zacian is kind of under the threat of that Incineroar coming back in with an Intimidate into the Umbreon slot. Venusaur comes out here as well. Sleep Powder is a very real threat onto this Zacian. Rotom Heat, though, can't get hit with Sleep Powder, which is very nice. It can absolutely get hit with Yawn. If Guillermo Dynamaxes and Francesco goes for the Yawn, if Umbreon survives a close combat or whatever it's looking for, that's going to be a little bit dangerous. Of course, Rotom Heat would still get 2 attacks off, which, you know, is better than what happened last time where it got 1 Dynamaxed attack off. But still, you would definitely prefer 3. And here we see Francesco switching out the Venusaur, bringing in the Incineroar, and now we are right back where we were in game 1. Except positioning gets a little bit different. So the Intimidate comes out, yada yada yada. Rotom Heat is going to Dynamax already, and Zacian is going to go ahead and get its substitute up, so it will have its substitute up for at least a turn, unless somehow Umbreon is able to take it out. That's usually going to be with a foul play, which will do a lot of damage to Zacian, because if Umbreon goes for a foul play into Zacian, that's going to be doing a fair amount of damage to the substitute, likely even break it because of how high Zacian's attack stat is. But that's even if this is a foul play Umbreon. So let's see here. Close Combat does come out, and as we saw before, it does about 60% damage to the Umbreon. And then Zacian's defenses do get lowered. There is no substitute, actually. It is just the Close Combat, so Guillermo going on the offensive this time, I think, is the smart move. And there we go, the Umbreon goes down right away. So no Yawn coming out. I think that is good, proper targeting. I think it was pretty clear that the Incineroar would be coming in, either for Umbreon or the Venusaur. The Venusaur, of course, you know, seems to be the target that... It's a slightly less threatening target, I would say, than the Umbreon, simply because Umbreon is just so bulky. If it gets an attack off, it's, you know, Guillermo is kind of already in danger, because then it can swap out, it can heal up with Moonlight, especially in the sun. And here we see Francesco brought the exact same 4. Don't blame him, but Guillermo has definitely adapted, switching out the Dragapult for the Grimmsnarl, and is making sure that this early game goes a little bit more in his favor, and actually a lot of it more in his favor in this case. He still has a Zacian that is completely alive. It's only -1 attack. It is staring down a Groudon, which it doesn't like to do, but this Rotom Heat is still in a fairly healthy spot. Now, of course, Max Rockfall is going to it's not going to be too much fun for this Rotom Heat to take, but we know it can take it. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any attack that this Rotom Heat has that can touch this Groudon, or at least do any considerable damage to it. We know it has Max Flare and Max Lightning. Max Lightning is ineffective. Max Flare will do absolutely nothing to a Groudon. Here we see the Grimmsnarl comes in. Now this could be, of course, they'll have Fake Out. Potentially they'll have Sucker Punch, maybe Light Screen Reflect, Taunt, all sorts of stuff. Grimmsnarl is a fantastic utility Pokemon. It might not even have an actual attacking move. It could just be Taunt, Light Screen, Reflect, and then who knows what else. Potentially a Protect. You never know. So Fake Out comes into the Grimmsnarl. Guillermo is really juggling these Fake Outs well. It's only a small amount of chip damage, but it is keeping his Pokemon alive, and it's making sure that he gets the attacks off that he wants, and it keeps him in good positioning. There we see Rotom Heat takes the Max Rockfall, does about 60% again, and here comes the Sandstorm again. Rotom Heat has the Safety Goggles, so it wouldn't particularly matter. Max Flare does come out, does about 25% to the Groudon, and changes it back to Sun. I honestly, it's definitely interesting. Groudon setting the Sun is helpful, but it doesn't seem like that's Francesco's main game plan. It seems like he's actually more inclined to go for the Max Rockfall and set up the Sand with the Groudon, so that Venusaur's Weather Balls can be Rock type, because that seems to be doing a little bit more damage to the rest of Guillermo's, to Guillermo's team comp. However, with Zacian and Rillaboom out, I'm kind of wondering if Francesco is going to go for that again. A Max Flare from Groudon, I think, would do a fair amount of damage, but it might not even have a Max Flare, right? It might just have Max Rockfall, Max Ground, Protect, and then maybe 2 ground moves, 2 rock moves, something like that. Although it is a little bit shocking to not. It would be a little bit shocking to not see a max flare on it. There we see the Reflect comes out. That is going to be huge. We see the Max Lightning come out of the Rotom Heat. Does a little bit of damage to the Incineroar. So now it's going to be a little bit of a slower game. Max Lightning comes out. That is helpful for all of Guillermo's other Pokemon to not get hit by Sleep Powder, but Rotom Heat will still be affected by Sleep Powder since it's not touching the ground. Another U-turn comes out. Grimmsnarl takes that like an absolute champ, and we know that Venusaur is coming out because it's the only Pokemon that Francesco still has in the bag. So Francesco doesn't know what the third Pokemon or what the fourth Pokemon is that Guillermo has. Now there's a pretty solid chance that I think there's a solid chance that we see a Sleep Powder out of this Venusaur. But alternatively, maybe not. This Rotom is, this is where the mind games come in a little bit. Will Rotom protect? Will Rotom switch out? Will Rotom just stay in? Will it try to attack? And as we see, it looks like he's going to be going potentially for the nasty plot. If Guillermo was thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of Francesco, like, oh, hell, maybe he won't attack me, it'll give me time to set up. Unfortunately, though, we know this Rotom is not fast in either Groudon or Venusaur. So it looks like he's going for the Protect. It would either be the Protect or the Attack, thinking that maybe Francesco is not going to be attacking the Rotom in case that it switches out, trying to take down Grimmsnarl as it's a little bit more of a threat, not in terms of outright damage, but if the game goes super, super long, I think Guillermo might actually, Guillermo currently probably has it in the bag, just because he currently has more Pokemon right now, and he is keeping them alive. The Reflect being up, like I said, that's big. Unless there's a critical hit that comes through, things are going to get a little bit more complicated for Francesco. And now there's a light screen up as well. This Venusaur is going to be struggling. It's not going to be doing a ton of damage. Weather Ball does come out again. It's going to be fire type damage this time. It is super effective on Grimmsnarl. No, it's not super effective on Grimmsnarl, but it's not resisted. It does a fair amount of damage, but the the light screen is keeping him alive. And there we see the power of the Reflect. Power of Reflect combined with the Protect. Of course, if there had not been a Reflect there, I think there's a very good chance that Rotom would be at least in the red, if not KO'd. Luckily, though, it is alive. Grimmsnarl takes a little bit more chip damage, and Guillermo has successfully stalled out Francesco's Dynamax without without losing a single Pokemon. Of course, Rotom and Grimmsnarl are both weak, but we see the Zacian in the back, nice and healthy, and Rillaboom as well, has taken no damage. Sand will stick around for a few more turns, but it won't be a massive, massive threat in the upcoming turns. Now, of course, I think it wouldn't be a horrible idea for Guillermo to try to play in the Sand. Zacian's special defense is boosted in it, but that might not matter too much as Groudon and Incineroar are both going to be more on the physical side. So Zacian comes out now, nice and healthy, doesn't take any damage from the Sandstorm, and there we see the Intrepid Blade, or the Intrepid Sword, boosts its attack +1. There we see the Taunt out of the Grimmsnarl, so no protecting from the Groudon, and once again we see the Weather Ball. So this time it's going to be a Rock-type Weather Ball. It does absolutely no damage to the Zacian, A, because it resists Rock-type, B, because Sandstorm boosts Zacian's special defense, C, because of the Reflect. So Guillermo really doing a good job of getting his positioning, getting his battlefield the way that he wants. It's that it just kind of walls off all of Francesco's damage. It looked like Groudon maybe went for a Protect there as well. The Taunt just kind of... Well, no, he didn't go for... maybe he went for a Will-O-Wisp. I don't know. I didn't see the attack from the Groudon after the Taunt. Rotom Heat comes out now, trying to... It looks like Guillermo's trying to draw in some... Exactly, trying to draw in the Incineroar, get the Intimidate out, potentially trying to draw out the Ground-type move from the Groudon. Intimidate, though, is not going to be doing anything. Now Grimmsnarl is kind of... it looked like we had the Spirit Break as well on it, so it looks like it probably is just going to be going for attacks now. It's used the Taunt, it's used the Reflect, it's used the Light Screen, and there we see the Spirit Break is starting to come out now. Just a little bit of chip damage. Groudon's special attack falls, not really going to do too much. And the chip damage starts to come out. This is where, Guillermo's in a pretty good position. Again, still hasn't revealed his fourth Pokemon, and that Rillaboom, I think from this range, without the Incineroar's Intimidate, a Rillaboom Grassy Glide will absolutely take out this Groudon. So, if Guillermo can figure out a way to get rid of this Incineroar, or even just get rid of one more Pokemon to ensure there's not any more switches, no more Intimidates, it's going to be in a pretty good spot. So here we see the Rock Slide comes out. Rotom does go down. Grimmsnarl gets pretty weak. So now Guillermo kind of has to choose who's he going to bring out. Is he going to reveal his last Pokemon, change up the electric terrain? Oh, and there we see the, what was that, a Citrus Berry, I believe. Looks like a Citrus Berry got popped. And Groudon heals up a fair amount. Incineroar switches out. And this Venusaur is going to be coming back in. So I think both players are in a solid spot here. They both have a ways to go to try to figure this out. I think Francesco's win condition is getting rid of it. Francesco's win condition is outlasting this Reflect and this Light Screen, right? Just surviving long enough, using these Intimidates from the Incineroar properly, making sure that Fake Outs work properly to get the Reflect to fade. And it looks like the Sandstorm has faded, the Electric Terrain has faded. Okay, so step in the right direction. Unfortunately, Guillermo is sending out the Rillaboom. This cannot be affected by Sleep Powder, but it can be affected by Intimidate. So there should be, I think, 3 more turns of Reflect up. If Francesco can survive these remaining few turns, which I think might be difficult, but if he can do it, he'll be in a pretty good spot. And of course, because this Incineroar really does kind of body both Zacian and Rillaboom, especially if there's still a Groudon. If this end game, if Francesco kind of wants to offer up Venusaur as a bit of a sacrificial lamb, still of course trying to throw out Sleep Powders, trying to throw out decent Weather Balls, trying to do damage with Sludge Bombs and whatnot, and chip away at Guillermo's team, I absolutely think that Incineroar plus Groudon can finish out a match between Grimmsnarl, Zacian, and Rillaboom. I absolutely think so. Here we see the Fake Out onto the Venusaur. Actually does a fair amount of damage. I don't think this Rillaboom... I guess this Rillaboom didn't get hit with a... did not get hit with an Intimidate. If it did, that was a ton of damage because it wasn't even a critical hit. Of course, Grassy Terrain healing up Francesco's team and not really doing much for Guillermo's is not ideal. But it's not going to matter too much in the long run. Zacian's damage output is just kind of massive. I wouldn't be surprised to see Incineroar come in again now. Potentially in place of the Groudon. I think Venusaur is, like I said, I think Venusaur is a little bit of a sacrificial lamb here. It's fairly speedy. I think it can take a couple more hits. But it's not going to be surviving much longer. And the Incineroar is very, very important in terms of making sure Zacian and Rillaboom just go down. And if Grimmsnarl comes in, I think it will pretty much immediately die to whatever attack Groudon throws at it. There we see the Groudon does switch out. Incineroar comes in. Intimidate is going to proc. Zacian is just going to go back down to neutral stats since it did have the +1 from Intrepid Sword. Rillaboom, I believe I think that might just be a -1 on the Rillaboom. Because that was just so much damage on Venusaur. Here we see Behemoth Blade comes out. That's going to be a good amount of damage, and Venusaur does go down. So I think Francesco would have absolutely liked to get more damage, ideally onto this Rillaboom with a potential Sludge Bomb. Here we see the Wood Hammer comes out, does a fair amount of damage to Incineroar, and only a little bit of recoil to this Rillaboom. Groudon has its work cut out for it. Incineroar, of course, it does still have access to Fake Out, which I think is going to be pretty big. I think you almost have to Fake Out the Zacian here. But at the same time, Zacian is the most likely to switch out in the face of a Groudon. Rillaboom, there's a pretty solid chance that Rillaboom doesn't outright kill Groudon with a Grassy Glide or a Wood Hammer, but I don't know if, because there's still a turn of Reflect up. There's still 1 turn of Reflect. If Reflect was down, I think Francesco could take out this Rillaboom no problem, and Fake Out into the Zacian slot, and just kind of guarantee a pretty good turn in the long run, right? Because if you Fake Out the Zacian slot, either the Zacian doesn't attack or it switches out into Grimmsnarl, which is perfectly fine. And if you attack into the Rillaboom slot with the Groudon, you either kill the Grimmsnarl or you kill the Rillaboom, right? Instead, Fake Out into the Rillaboom slot, doesn't want to get hit with a Grassy Glide or a Wood Hammer. Close Combat comes out into the Incineroar. Now Francesco is in a little bit of a rough spot. Incineroar does go down, and Groudon, we don't know if it'll go for a Rock Slide. It looks like it is going for an... what is those called? Precipice Blades. Zacian does go down, but it doesn't do anything to the Rillaboom, really at all. So Zacian goes down, and now so now Reflect should wear off. Groudon is in a fairly good position. We know it has Protect, so if he wants, he can try to heal up a little bit, but I don't think that that's going to be in his best interest. Grimmsnarl comes out. It doesn't have Fake Out. It has Reflect, Light Screen, Taunt, and Spirit Break. I think if you're a Grimmsnarl, I think you just... This is a tough decision. So I think if you're the Rillaboom, the question is, do you die to a potential Fire Fang out of the Groudon? Guillermo definitely knows this calculation. I don't think it does. Even with the sun up, we see the Taunt come out. No Protect can happen. At least on the next turn, and there we see Rock Slide coming out, and it misses on the Rillaboom. It will hit the Rillaboom, but I think that tells me that there is no Fire Fang or anything on this Groudon, which kind of spells doom and gloom for Francesco here. There we see Woodhammer comes out again. Groudon goes down even through the Intimidates. That is crazy, and it looks like Guillermo takes game 2 of the series. So that was a much better game out of Guillermo. However, it was still way closer than I think he would like it to be. Game 1 was all in Francesco's favor. Guillermo, this got a little bit close in this game too. A hit on that Rock Slide with potentially a flinch would have changed the entire course of the game. Well, maybe not. Rillaboom probably could have survived a few more hits. But I am definitely I am endlessly surprised by Rillaboom being able to just do an insane amount of damage through 2 Intimidates, right? Because that was 2 Intimidates minimum. It might have been 3. And a Woodhammer still KO'd Groudon from about 70%. So this is a very exciting series. It is currently tied 1-1 between Francesco and Guillermo. Francesco now brought the same team to game 2. I think there's a solid chance that he changes things up. Guillermo I think kind of has his number on it now. And Rotom Heat is putting in work, right? Grimmsnarl seems to be a pretty good answer to Umbreon. It just kind of eliminates Umbreon's main utility in that it has at least 3 non-attacking moves, and its really only good attacking move is likely going to be Foul Play, which is not really that good against Rotom Heat, considering Rotom Heat is a special attacker. So I'm looking for a little bit of a change from Francesco's side. There are still 2 Pokemon that we haven't seen in the back. Maybe switching out the Umbreon for that, just to kind of respect the Grimmsnarl. But who knows? Maybe taking a different mode other than his Sun mode. We'll certainly see. If I'm Guillermo, I think I'm in. It feels like you're in the driver's seat, right? You kind of have this matchup figured out. It was closer than you would like. I don't know if I would change those same 4. Again, the threat of Dragapult is kind of always there. It's always going to be a little bit scary with Clear Body and whatnot. But it's definitely going to be an interesting game. I'm excited to see what happens in this game 3. A single flinch, a single crit on those Rock Slides would have been, could have changed everything there. Both players, though, they're playing very well. I think Francesco might have to change up modes slightly. I think Guillermo is only going to perform better and better against this very strong Sun team, this very strong Sun core, which as we saw, Groudon really it just doesn't really care too much about Zacian or Rotom Heat, but Rillaboom does a very good job into it. So let's get into this game 3. We'll see what the switch up is, and there we go. We actually see the change up. So Venusaur hadn't really been doing too much, right? Like Weather Balls have been coming out, they'd been doing a little bit of damage. Sludge Bombs hadn't done anything. We hadn't seen any Sleep Powders out of it. We don't even know if it had it. So Francesco changes it up. Brings out Groudon and Charizard to start it off with. Guillermo starts with Rotom Heat and Zacian, which is the same start that he had in game 1. Actually, is at least not leading with the Grimmsnarl. Expected Francesco to change it up a little bit, and so now this is definitely going to be a very different dynamic. Zacian doesn't like the Charizard very much, but for a very different reason than the Incineroar. Charizard can absolutely just delete a Zacian off the battlefield if it Gigantamaxes. Francesco, I wouldn't be surprised if this Charizard Gigantamaxes right away to go ahead and get its Gmax Wildfire onto the battlefield and just do a ton of damage to Zacian. Whatever Guillermo brings in, right, Rillaboom wouldn't mind taking that, Killing a Rillaboom would be fine, killing Grimstar would be fine, Dragapult would be a little bit iffy, but Francesco instead just opts to switch out the Charizard to bring in the Incineroar, right? Every time Francesco sees this Zacian, this is pretty much what Incineroar's job is in this metagame, right? Come in and make sure that this Zacian does not get out of hand. Francesco Dynamaxes, looks like, I mean, of course, that is going to be the Groudon. So starting off on the offensive this time. Previous two games have been started off very defensive with Incineroars and Umbreons and making sure a lot of switching happened. This time, bringing out the Groudon and starting to Dynamax immediately wants to make sure that this Rotom Heat doesn't get to, kind of run free throughout his team. Guillermo actually answering immediately with a Dynamax of his own. This will be Rotom Heat as well. So Rotom Heat will survive again. So these two players seem to have like some automatic things that when they see X Pokemon, Y happens. For Francesco, when he sees Zacian, switch into Incineroar. And for Guillermo, when you see Groudon on the battlefield, Rotom Heat Dynamaxes right away. Zacian goes for the substitute. This is a pretty smart move out of Guillermo. Francesco is probably going to be targeting the Rotom Heat. There we go. Once again, does about 60% damage. Even if Francesco had targeted the Zacian, a Precipice Blades into it, or a Max Quake into it, you'll be taking less damage with the substitute. Absolutely. Max Flare comes out. We know how much that does to Groudon. It's not going to be KO anything. It just changes the weather once again, which isn't too important. I actually think this Incineroar has safety goggles, so none of these Pokemon would have been taking any damage from the Sandstorm. But what it does do is it gives the potential for this Rotom Heat's Max Flare next turn to do some damage, but I think it's very likely that Groudon just goes for the Max Rockfall again. Now, Guillermo's Rotom Heat is in a pretty precarious position. Groudon is likely not going to go down to a Behemoth Bash, and it is faster than the Rotom Heat, which means it can absolutely take this Rotom Heat down. And if it stays alive, that is going to be a little bit tenuous. Good news for Guillermo. Fake Out's not going to do anything to the substitute, so Zacian can absolutely get an attack off. They receive the Behemoth Blade. It will come out once again, likely going into the Groudon. Might be going into the Incineroar to try to take it down, but no. Hits the Groudon. Yeah, does about 40% damage, so Groudon is certainly low. But as we see, the Citrus Berry, that's going to put it up to probably a little bit above half. Nope, right at half. And I'm expecting to see, yep, there's the Max Rockfall. Oh no, this is actually a Max Quake. Hits the substitute, doesn't do any damage to the Zacian. I think Guillermo kind of set this up, I think all the way back in game one when last time after Rotom Heat took a Max Rockfall, the turn after it immediately swapped out. I think Francesco might have been expecting that again and just decided to break the substitute. But now we see Max Flare come out again. This is going to put Groudon in a pretty precarious position. Now it's almost going to go down to pretty much anything. Flare Blitz is going to come out. This is going to do a fair amount to Zacian, and it will knock it out. But Guillermo is in a pretty decent position. This Groudon is weak. Rotom Heat would certainly, get KO'd from another attack by it. But as we see, yeah, Guillermo bringing the same things as he did in game one. But basically forcing Francesco to switch things out in game three. Guillermo playing the mind games a little bit and using the best of three format to his advantage. Rotom Heat, as we saw, yeah, I think the right play here is make sure this Rotom Heat survives. You're probably, it will resist anything that Charizard throws at it. It's not really too scared of an Incineroar. Whatever Francesco has in the back, be it Umbreon, be it Venusaur, some other likely supportive Pokemon, Rotom Heat's not going to care too much about it. And Rotom Heat, with a Thunderbolt or a Thunder, can definitely deal with this Charizard well. Dragapult, there we go. It looks like it is using a Phantom Force. This Groudon is going down one way or another unless it switches out. Max Quake does absolutely nothing, and Guillermo has a very solid turn here where Francesco gets absolutely nothing from it. And the Groudon goes down into non-Dynamax form, so does the Rotom. Guillermo's in a solid position here. Francesco now kind of has to take the gamble. Is this Phantom Force targeting the Incineroar slot or the Groudon slot? If Groudon stays in, it is 100% getting KO'd, even through the Protect. That's how Phantom Force works. But if it switches out, whatever comes in is going to be taking a lot of damage as well. Dragapult is a very scary offensive Pokemon. Francesco has no way to set up something like a Reflector or Light Screen, which, to be fair, Phantom Force doesn't even care about. Guillermo's in a solid position here. I think Rotom Heat, there's a chance that it swaps out. There's a chance that it also just stays in and takes the risk. There we go. Groudon goes down, and as we said, Rotom Heat really doesn't mind taking any hits from this Incineroar. even if it's a U-turn, and it actually goes for, I believe that's a Thunderbolt or a Spark? I'm not entirely sure what that animation is. We do see the Darkest Lariat come out though, so Incineroar does get a fair amount of damage on the Dragapult. It goes down to 1. The Focus Sash on this Dragapult coming in clutch here, so Dragapult will get another attack off for sure. It's going to be dealing a lot of damage one way or the other. Francesco's Darkest Lariat though, you know, putting in work. Both players have dealt a ton of damage to each other, and there's the Venusaur. So Venusaur is speedy, right? We know that. Its chlorophyll ability makes it go zoom, but is Dragapult faster is the question. I don't think it is, right? Unless this Venusaur is max, well, this Venusaur might be max speed. There's a good chance that it is. We've seen it just be offensive. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, it's not, we know it's not, is it Choice Specs? I don't know. I don't think it's Choice Specs. I think we saw it use 2 different attacks in a row. I believe this Venusaur is actually Focus Sash. And if that's the case, it's like the max speed, max special attack. I think that outspeeds Dragapult in the sun. Incineroar, of course, can go for whatever it wants to, and there, of course, So Venusaur is faster than Dragapult. I think Guillermo was just kind of taking that risk, taking that gamble, because sometimes these Venusaurs aren't max speed and they don't outspeed Dragapult, because Dragapult is insanely fast. Unfortunately, though, Dragapult does go down. Overheat does take out the Venusaur, but now special attack. Now that Rotom Heat is in a bit of a precarious position. We'll see how much damage this Incineroar does with a Flare Blitz into the Rotom Heat. I don't think it's going to do enough. It doesn't do enough. Rotom Heat is still alive. There's no burn or anything. Rotom takes a little bit of recoil. But now Guillermo's actually in kind of the worst possible spot you can be in, with a Rillaboom up against an Incineroar and a Charizard. Now Rillaboom does have Fake Out, which is good for Guillermo. And I believe Rotom Heat is faster than Charizard. If Charizard has Protect, Guillermo is in a... I think Guillermo loses this no matter what, because all you do is you protect the Charizard and you Flare Blitz the Rotom Heat. But at the same time, yeah, exactly. Guillermo, if Guillermo, you know, anticipates that, you kind of have to go for a different option here. You kind of have to gamble on the fact that they're going to double target, or that they're going to try to target down Rotom Heat, maybe use the Protect on the Charizard, which they don't do. Charizard actually goes for the attack into the Rotom Heat, not attacking the Rillaboom. Incineroar gets weak. I think there's a good chance that the Darkest Lariat exactly goes into the Rotom Heat. So Francesco doesn't target down the Rillaboom at all, and actually gives Guillermo a route to winning this. Charizard is still at full health, which is definitely scary, but a Rotom can absolutely do a lot of damage to this, even with a double attack drop. Guillermo almost clicking the Fake Out there, forgetting that almost clicking the Fake Out, but did not go for it. And now just going Grassy Glide into the Incineroar, which will take it out absolutely. There is no Intimidates onto the Rillaboom, and I believe this is a Thunderbolt into the Charizard, but Charizard goes for the Heat Wave and takes out both of them. No misses here. Whoo! Gosh dang, that was a close match between Francesco Piopro and Guillermo Castilla, but Francesco comes out on top. I think that was actually an overheat, not a heat wave. I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that last attack was. Reading things in Spanish is a little bit difficult, not going to lie. Or that might have been Portuguese, my apologies. But no, that was an absolutely phenomenal last game. Rotom Heat coming in clutch, kind of an important focal point in all 3 games on Guillermo's side. And of course, those Umbreons, the first 2 games from Francesco, really kind of set the tone. However the Umbreon did is how those games went. Francesco took the first game fairly convincingly. Guillermo narrowly wins the second one, and Francesco, seemingly by just the skin of his teeth, takes the third game with a last-ditch attack from Charizard, hitting both the Rillaboom and the Rotom Heat for the game. So, absolutely phenomenal game, absolutely phenomenal start to Players Cup 3. I know it's been like a month since this came out. I have not watched any of it, so I'm excited to go through all this, go through it all with you. And of course, thank you all so much for watching. We're going to see more exciting matches from this. I'm excited to see how Francesco does in the remainder of this tournament. We'll see how he goes through the rest of the regional finals. And of course, be safe, Be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.